Learn podcast, hosted by Yuliya and Ina, friends, colleagues, passionate teachers and learners. In this series of cozy talks with a cup of tea or coffee, we talk about how we live and learn, move countries, adapt to change and mentalities, encourage and teach. While polishing our own understanding of learnability, we find support in the 4 pillars of Live and Learn philosophy, which include growth mindset, expat life, language acquisition, and skills development. Join us, enjoy, live and learn.
Hi, how are you doing? How's life treating you?
Life's treating me good. I'm treating life good. We're good.
You're both good one with another.
I think we don't compete. We just satisfy the needs of one another. I'm trying to feel satisfied with what I get from life. Life is trying to satisfy me with what it has to offer. So we're good.
Oh, what a good attitude. What a good attitude.
To have enough, and to have the sufficiency of something is actually competency, according to Etymology dictionary that I'm currently a fan of. It says competency in the meaning of sufficiency to satisfy the wants of life was registered in late 16th century and comes from Latin competentia, meeting together, agreement, symmetry, which in its turn has its origins in competence, which is the present participle of competere, to compete, to have a fight, to compete. And you know what is interesting? The meaning in which we use competency nowadays, like sufficiency of qualification for something, is recorded starting in 1797. So it's not the newest notion.
What was before? So could you formulate that what a competent man would be before changing the meaning?
Just having enough, nothing to do with qualification, but sufficiency to satisfy the wants of life. Having enough, feeling enough.
So this is the mantra of being good enough for something, right? So guys, you're good enough. You're a good enough mother. You're a good enough teacher. You're a good enough professional. That means you're competent.
That's a circle, you see. Like if in the 16th century, the meaning that was registered meant exactly this, sufficiency to satisfy the wants of life, having enough, meeting together, had this, not collaborative, but just the meaning that included being together, meeting together, agreement, all about the positive non-rivalry kind of things, which later shifted the meaning to competere as compete, be rivals, fight, and then having sufficiency of qualification to do something.
Okay, so we understood that the word competent means being enough, and was initially considering the semantics of not competing, and then in the end brought the competition into its meaning. However, it's really interesting that of course, depending on the notion, depending on its formulation, we have completely different definition, right? What's define? Define, that means making it finer, right? Defining from the other thing, because the way I use the word competence in my research, in my understanding, and in my mindset is comes from the skills development and area of research and of teaching. And I think the competence is a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes with regard to a specific task. So, for example, digital competence would be a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitudes with regards to the use of technology to perform tasks, solve problems, communicate, manage information, collaborate, create, share content in the way that is effective, appropriate, secure, critical, and so on, so on, so on, so on. So basically, the main idea of the word competence is a triad, right? Three columns, three pillars of the theoretical basis, the knowledge, skills, how to do this implementation of this knowledge, and the attitude. What is the attitude with which I do it securely, appropriately, and good enough?
And so all of these, as far as I remember, have always been part of educational theory, and it's always been there. Has anything changed recently in the understanding of competences in this triad?
The main idea is that when we're talking about skills, we actually mean the competence in the broader meaning. When we're talking, negotiation skills, well, we do not learn only knowledge, right? When we're talking about skills, we normally think about practical use of something, which is a part of the competence. And of course, you wouldn't be learning negotiation just, having no attitude to it, having no motivation, having no inner drive or, curiosity and so on. You just wouldn't learn that anyway. In my understanding, there is like a specific academic or methodological difference between competence and skills, but in more broader sense, when we're talking skills-oriented teaching, learning, education, I think we mean competence in this sense. I think skills is just quicker to say and less fancy. While teaching agricultural competence, so I'm having 2 groups this year, so it's there is this a little bit of a different perspective in it, because when I was teaching intercultural communication, then the focus was of course on the communication, and here when we're teaching intercultural competence, we're adding up a lot of the focus that it's not only communication or not necessarily the end idea is not only to use the phrases correctly or appropriately or in the place where you need them, right? Not only to build a dialogue or a negotiation or a discussion, but also to have this holistic understanding of complex structure of all the knowledge, that it is never-ending, dynamic, and self-updating, of the skills that need to be polished, mastered, and so on, and of this attitude, of this curiosity, of this learnability.
It's wonderful just how these meanings that shift from something to something else in the course of time bring us to sometimes a mess. Well, when we are trying to distinguish, to differentiate between what is there behind these words. I've now opened again the etymological dictionary. Do you know what it says about skill? Late 12th century, power of discernment, distinction, ability to make out, adjustment, related to what we now call a scale of something. It comes from Proto-Germanic divide, separate, which later entered other languages like Danish, Swedish, Middle Low German, to differ, and so on, always with the meaning of separation, discrimination, cutting. The PIE root is skel, to cut. And the sense of ability and cleverness was first recorded in the early 13th century. I'm just amazed.
Because the modern definition would be, well, at least the one that I keep on using during the teaching the skills and writing the articles, and that is the ability to solve a task or a problem in practice. an instrumental skill. You can use this word like cutting and defining and refining as the instrument, right? So it's an instrumental skill, the ability to apply this method, material, or a tool, right? So basically, how well do you use this tool, this instrument? The implementation. So how skillful are you, right? How well you can take all the knowledge that you received about using this skill, where to, when, how, in which situations, so all this context, ideation, theoretical part. How well do you implement, what's your skill set? That skill set would be like a tool set. In the broader meaning, this is just like toolbox. A skill set and the toolbox would be it would be weird to use that in one sentence, because that would be just formulating the same idea twice.
Absolutely. And then all those differences between the words tool and instrument, and there is some if we dig deeper. It's the best reading if you don't know what to read. Now it would be my evergreen recommendation. Are you bored? Don't you know what to read? Go and dig deeper in an etymological dictionary, because you're sure to find something amazing there. Pearls of knowledge. Back to skills and competences from the perspective of language learning. For instance, when we are talking about reading, writing, listening, speaking skills or competences or something else, what is more adequate in your opinion?
Well, the SAFER, the framework, right, the European framework formulating this defines it as skills. Reading skills, speaking skills, conversational skills as a part of speaking, right? This is a skill, this is how to. This is the ability to solve a task or a problem in practice and provide a piece of solution, right? When you're asked to write a business email, or an application or anything like this, this checks the business writing skills, the ability to perform the task within specific context and apply it adequately, securely, and effectively. All the definitions fall here.
But if it shows how good are you in doing so, then it's a competence.
The competence would be as well, how much have you learned about it? And what's your attitude, what's your thinking, what's your motivation behind that?
If we get back to the etymology, then if you feel you're good enough, that's your competence. Yeah, okay, I can write a business email. I might make some mistakes there, but I'm good enough. I might be not skillful enough, but my competence would allow me to solve the task on an appropriate level.
So becoming competent comes from practice, experience of doing or performing or implementing this knowledge into how to formulation, right? How to get the skill. So basically with practice, it makes you not only perfect but also competent. That can be a fantastic solution to this never-ending feeling of not enough. I think we can even link this to the Imposter Syndrome talk, because when you feel not enough, when you seek for the external confirmation of your skills and abilities, then that might be a good formulation of feeling incompetent.
Imposter syndrome, you mean? I would add that polishing the skills could help, but to a certain extent, because this never-ending process of polishing the skills because of the imposter syndrome means there is never enough that feeling of competence. So to me, psychologically, it would be a skill is something more measurable compared to a competence. And then it's your turn to say how we can measure both or either.
Skill is something that you can present for evaluation. Knowledge is something that is either theoretical or factual, that is essentially a collection of facts, theories, and principles. As well, you can present it to evaluation. Just remember how many tests we used to have in school, which assessed or measured only the knowledge in the end. Yeah, so back in school, I didn't have this project-based teaching or skills-oriented teaching, something that I do every day now. I would be amazingly happy if we had it during our school time.
That's another thing, because I can't imagine education of 100 years from now be similar to what we have now. Hopefully not, and definitely not. And then people who will be at school or will be teaching at that time will look back and say, oh, I can't imagine being taught like this. We had all those skill-based, project-based, etc. things at school. Oh, no, I might sound like a dinosaur, but this is definitely not the way you should be taught.
Yeah, but there's the third pillar that differentiates in this case. This is the attitude, right? Whether or not you're being proactive, analytical, or you're having a critical position on any specific skill or any specific knowledge would actually differentiate it from competency and skill. Skill is how to. Competency is what for. Knowledge is what. In which way. So getting it all together brings us back to, the very philosophy of learning. You cannot learn anything without those things, right? If you don't know why you're learning, your results wouldn't be satisfactory, let alone competent. Yeah, if you're learning something, you don't know how to implement it, how to put it into practice, and how to use those tools or those theories, well, what's the point? And if the attitude, I don't know, this might include ethics, values, priorities, accountability, cooperation, autonomy, a never-ending list. Even if I know these things, even I know how, but I don't care or do not prioritize, well, then most probably not competent enough. There is this formulation: if I cannot account on your knowledge and your skills, how can you be competent to this understanding? I do think that we need to actually make a beautiful bridge between these two episodes with the imposter syndrome, because this attitude defines whether or not you can check your skills and knowledge when you're thinking about competency and being good enough. Because then you have the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? When you have earlier you are in the learning of something, so just think of the students who are learning a new subject for them, right, in their major. So they just come to the first, second year of the studies and they start learning whatever they chose for their major. And they, after a first or second semester, they feel like they have enough of it. They understand, they start understanding some concepts, realizing how to use them, and so on. And their level of self-assessment of their competence is the highest, right? Then the third, the fourth, the fifth year come closer. They understand that they know much less. Well, they feel that they know much less because their knowledge becomes more specified, more refined, right? And then if you continue doing a doctorate, in this case, you spend 3, 4, 5 years understanding how much there is actually progress and advance in this case, and how very little you know compared to this. And then the self-assessment, self-measurement, is very, very low in this case. And the law or the syndrome, I don't know, of this. And the more you're spending your time and the more attitude you're bringing on finding, and then only later in your career you can say that, well, I've learned enough and I feel competent. Actually, I asked this question a couple of weeks ago to one of the most prominent philosophers. We had an opportunity to be in the same talk and to ask questions about the borderlines, the borders of our cognition, and what to do if you understand that you do not understand, right? So how to behave in the field where you do not feel competent. And we had all these beautiful formulations, ideas, development of those ideas and so on, very beautiful talk. And then I asked, where is this fine border between the Dunning-Kruger effect and the Imposter Syndrome? So what in the end is the how to find this light in the end of the tunnel? Because we are fighting all the time. The more professional we're becoming, the more we doubt whether or not we're competent enough to continue growth, to start new courses, to, I don't know, get more focus, to become on the spotlight, to talk at the conferences, to write papers, and to ask for a higher pay rate or something like that. There comes the moment when we feel that there is this, how competent am I in this case?
So many ideas, so many thoughts. One prominent example that comes to my mind is that of Noam Chomsky, who, if you heard his talks 50, 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, he still is one of the most competent figures in the field of language development, of human language. And if you would listen to his talks half a century ago, you would hear a very confident speaker who knew exactly what his theory presupposed. When we listen to him now, he's doubting more and more, and he's asking for proof of language development in animals to confront with his ideas. He is asking for this proof because it's not that he's not confident in his ideas, but he knows that he might not have enough information, that he might not have enough experiment that he is aware of, whether these experiments prove something different from what he postulates in his theory, and so on and so forth. So, well, I would say the more competent professional is, and at the same time, the less imposter syndrome is developed in them, the more open a person would be to new evidence, to confront their ideas, and to give life, to give way to something new to appear without the fear of being judged as incompetent. On the contrary, being open to new evidence and being ready to welcome new ideas, even if they might be different from the previous theories.
One thing is to welcome new ideas. Another thing is to be ready to external judgment and external assessment. Therefore, I try to formulate the confidence as intrinsic feeling of being enough, being good enough. And when we're having the external formulation, external message, judgment, feedback, appraisal, to have enough confidence, to have enough accountability, to have enough proof to show the attitude, the competence. So that's why skills is not enough in this thing. So you need to have knowledge, skills, and attitude to confront external judgment, or to welcome the external judgment in this matter?
I think these are two different layers. Let's say for a skillful person who has that adequate perception of themselves as an expert. I can do this. Here's my certificate. And I intrinsically believe this certificate tells the truth about my skills. If all of these come together and there is no conflict, well, ideally, no imposter syndrome should arise from that. If there is a conflict, okay, I've been learning some knowledge, skills, competencies, then I get my certificate, which says you are not just good enough, you are this level of this skill or competence. But something stops me from implementing this knowledge, these skills, these competences into my practical activities. Then there is some kind of a conflict in between, and it has little to do with the skills themselves. It has more to do with psychological issues that have their way of being solved.
You know what the above mentioned philosopher answered me to my question. So his name is Professor Andrei Ballester, and his answer was quite spontaneous to me. But then I realized that we keep on talking about this every time. He mentioned that knowledge, skills, and competence is a social construct which belongs to the social sphere and therefore needs to be communal. So you really need a community to weigh out, this professional community union, or as we keep on talking about professional tribe, to be able to see, measure, evaluate yourself not only for your own measures, but around everybody else. And I think this is obviously where the conferences come, the departments come, and this professional environment brings in. So colloquiums, conferences, workshops.
Are you noticing you mentioned these words, conference, colloquial? They're all about the same. Conference is ferde or something, bring together or carry something together, like not having all the load all to yourself. Colloquials are all the meetings where we talk together. And this is what we started with, discussing etymology of competence, that in the beginning was satisfying what life brings or something. And then at some point comes from competere, so compete and have something to do with the others. Yeah, which in the beginning used to mean be together.
Okay, so yes, we came from the understanding the skills and competences and how they can be seen from different perspectives and still constitute a bigger notion one to another, right? Being a part, like skills being a part of a competence. We discussed what attitude and knowledge has to do with the competences, the other two parts of it. We discussed the formulations and definitions of a skill set toolbox, and definitions of competence, which made a beautiful bridge between the beginning of the talk and the end of the talk, when we have the understanding that being together, working together, being a part of a community, being a part of bigger professional tribe, taken an active part in the professional conferences environment, colloquials, workshops, and continuous professional development, brings us to the concept of live and learn.
Live and learn. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you share live and learn philosophy, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all the major social media, comment, and spread the word about this podcast so that more people could get their weekly portion of growth mindset content. Live and learn.